that's carried. And there were no declarations of interest advised, and so we now come to public participation. And I should say that all three items of public participation and deputations by appointment are all in relation to item 13. So at the conclusion of the deputations by appointment, we will move to item 13 and deal with that. Are we good with that? Okay, so each of the deputations have prepared written material which we'll circulate with each of the deputations. I'd like to, because I'm aware that Hands Off Hagley have provided a number of questions, I think it would be appropriate to hear from them first, because obviously we then have the proposed, the current holder of the lease arrangements and the assignee to hear from as well. So if we can get all the questions on the table, I think that will mean for a more constructive discussion. So could I invite Hands Off Hagley, Martin Meehan and Ang Dingwall to come forward, please, and their papers being circulated now. Welcome, and each of the deputations have 10 minutes and you can use it as you wish, either to make the full presentation within the 10 minutes or allow some time for questions from councillors.
Thank you for the opportunity. The staff report on this item suggests that the proposal may result in some negative feedback from members of the public who oppose cricket and the use of Hagley Park for organised sport. I personally have coached junior football for 30 years and made excessive use of Hagley Park and have always been very, very grateful for the opportunity. Hands Off Hagley is not anti-cricket or organised sport. It's an organisation that stands for the balanced use of Hagley Park for all people. As a result of Hands Off Hagley's submissions to the Independent Hearings Panel, opposed by council staff, we achieved a heritage listing for Hagley Park and the removal of car parking from the grassed areas of the park. On the face of it, this proposal appears to have appeal, but on closer scrutiny, a lot of issues arise. Public interest in an asset such as Hagley Park should mean thorough consideration be given to any decision. Rush decisions do not make for good decision making. There's no clear reason for the deadline of the 28th of February 2017, and there's no clear relation, or clear explanation in relation to other things that the contract will be conditional upon in the Horticultural Society letter and terms satisfactory to the trust in the Cricket Trust letter. The report sets out the reasoning why there should not be public consultation in terms of the level of significance. And it's worth remembering that the park is vested in the Mayor, councillors and citizens of Christchurch. Everybody owns it. Hands Off Hagley considers therefore that to allow or to allocate low significance for community interest is wrong. The report also claims there will be no possible costs or risks to council, ratepayers and the wider community in carrying out the decision. In view of the millions of dollars of ratepayers' money that's already been spent in recent years on this area, we have difficulty in accepting this prediction. Hands Off Hagley is concerned with several areas of non-disclosure in the council officer's report. There's the non-disclosure of the current lease and the non-disclosure of the wording of all the proposed variations in the lease. There's a lack of clarity over the proposed variations, and the report notes that the Horticultural Society is permitted to assign the lease to a third party. However, the assigning of a lease is a matter to be considered under the Reserves Act, and the Reserves Act requires that not only must a third party be another voluntary organisation, but it must be a voluntary organisation whose aims and objects are similar to the leasee. The question arises, can the aims and objects of the Canterbury Cricket Trust be said to be similar to those of the Canterbury Horticultural Society, whose website states they are the largest horticultural club for home gardeners in New Zealand? This means that the current lease cannot be assigned in compliance with Section 115 of the Reserves Act. Canterbury Cricket Trust would have to apply for a new lease, which would have to be publicly notified, since the proposal does not meet the relevant Section 54 requirement for a lease proposal to be in conformity with and contemplated by the 2007 Hagley Park Management Plan. Application for a new lease would allow significant matters of concern to the public to be fully addressed. The negative impact of this proposal on public parking in the area, visual amenity impacts as a result of increased vehicle and human use, the intensification of the site, and the potential commercialisation of the site through the pay-for-play use for indoor cricket. There could also possibly be consideration of the use of the Metro Sports facility for the indoor cricket. Thank you. Any questions?
Very good. Questions? Aaron.
Here we go.
Yeah, thank you for coming in and making your deputation. I've quite a big question here, and it's over process. Last night an email was sent round some councillors and not all, and if you look at the list of councillors that went round, some would say they're the councillors that sit centre and left of centre politically, and if this was on the other foot and the council had done something like this, it wouldn't pass the front page test. Would you like to explain how that came about and why those questions came out at 8 o'clock last night, giving no one a chance to go to staff and get the correct answers?
The email went out at 8 o'clock last night because I was home from work at 7:30, and the list of councillors, I mean, I was a very busy person. The list of councillors are the names I could remember, to be honest. So I apologise to the councillors I couldn't remember the names of.
Well, I'm one of them.
Yeah, I am forgettable, Martin, so I will forgive you for that. But it's just a simple search on the internet would give you the list of councillors. It just, like I said, if it was on the other foot and the councillor just picked who they might send it to and give load questions the night before something that people can get very passionate about, and I respect your passion, and I do thank you for speaking on behalf of some people of Christchurch that feel the way that you do and your group, and that is good because that's what democracy is. But for us it wouldn't work the other way round, and so I do really question that.
It was also fairly short notice for us as well, because we only found out when this thing came up in the newspaper. So it's been a bit of a sprint. I'll remember you next time. Thank you.
I think councillors at ccc.govt.nz does the lot, and if you really want me included, then councillors and mayor at ccc.govt.nz does the trick. So thank you. Are there any other questions? Yanni?
I thought we'd agreed to set up some sort of working group with you to resolve issues around the uses of Hagley Park. So I was just concerned that you'd found out about this through the media. Is there still a group that's meeting with interested people over, minimising the environmental impacts on Hagley Park?
No, it was, I think the council passed a recommendation to set up a Guardians of Hagley Park in the last term, but this is just sort of dragged on and we've made no progress with that. We've made lots of suggestions for membership of this, we've proposed members of it, and we're still waiting, and if we had such a body, then we would be redundant and everything could be fed through and you'd get some constructive and decent expertise on things.
Right, so we might like to consider doing that. I mean, I'm just mindful that you've raised a number of concerns around the process, but also around the environmental impacts as well, and I just thought having a regular group meeting around, addressing these concerns proactively would be quite useful.
A proactive group around Guardians. I mean, I made the point the other day that, an organisation like Hands Off Hagley has existed since they first promoted putting a high school on Hagley Park. It's called Christ College. So it's, the idea about protecting the park has been around for a very, very long time. So it's a great idea to have to be honest, something positive like guardians as opposed to hands off might actually be a positive message that would bring more people on board with different activities.
We're waiting to step back.
Yeah, great. Phil?
So can I just comment on that since it's been raised? Last term, Head of Parks has had a lot of discussions with Hands Off Hagley and wider groups, and previously myself as the former chair of the committee. And so there are a number of wide range really of interested groups who are interested in Hagley Park, and we are certainly, and I'm sure the new committee will look at how in fact we do develop a working group that will contribute in a constructive way.
Yep. Any other questions? 38 seconds to go? No? Look, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors.
If I could have Canterbury Cricket Trust, Lee Robinson and Carol Harris. I know that sort of sounds slightly out of order, but I kind of wanted to conclude the deputations with the organisation that's asking for the transfer of the lease.
I understand that, Mayor, yes.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, councillors, thank you for this opportunity. You should have received, hopefully, the copy of the submission that went into the council yesterday afternoon.
It's just being circulated now, so...
Just before I start, Mayor, that concept of the guardians is something we would really value being part of, and it creates a positive environment in which to discuss everyone's issues and concerns, and we would welcome that.
That's a great idea.
I'll refer in the submission to the prints that we put in front of you there as I go through the document. So we're filing this on behalf of our application for an assignment of the current lease. The lease has a term expiring in 2042 with a renewal in 2030. I won't go through the objects of the trust except to say that it talks about providing support for cricket and all other sports for use of pupils, students and other participants, and as well as making coaching of cricket available and supporting facilities for that sport. The Cricket Trust is aware that for some time the Horticultural Society, the current lessee under the lease, and subsequent variation has wanted to sell its interest under that lease in the building which it owns at Hagley Oval. We understand the Society will submit to this effect in its submissions before the Council, and in any event the Society's position has been endorsed and confirmed by the fact that it entered into an agreement with the Trust in December of this year. The Trust has agreed to purchase the building together with the Society's interest under the lease, subject to the Trust arranging satisfactory finance and subject to this Council consenting to the assignment of the current lease. The lease, and this is in comment to Mr. Meehan's submission as well, the lease contemplates such recreational activities as from time to time may be approved pursuant to clause B in the schedule, which reads, the lessee can make the facilities available for other recreational activities with the prior approval of the lessee. So the lease does provide already for the objectives that we stand for and that we are seeking the assignment of the lease for. It is worth noting that Cricket actually built this hall in the late 80s, sold it to the Horticultural Society, and the lease was amended for the objection to cater for the objections or the objects or the purposes of that society when they took the hall over. Given the Trust seeks to consent to the assignment and for the hall to be used for recreational purposes, that such recreational purposes are contemplated as a use permitted under the lease, that such recreational purposes are wholly within the context and meaning permitted under the Reserves Act, and the Trust is a voluntary organisation, it is a charity, whose aims and objects are similar to the permitted recreational use under the lease and the Reserves Act 1977. As a result, the Trust's position is that it is in the public interest and is contemplated by the lease for an assignment to be granted and the facilities to be used for its intended recreational purpose. The Trust has arranged finance satisfactory to itself under its agreement to purchase the hall from the Society, and the agreement therefore remains subject only to this Council's consent to the assignment of the lease. If the consent of the transfer of the lease is obtained to the agreement provides that the Trust will settle the purchase on the 31st of March of this year, and it has the money to do so. So to answer Mr Meehan's question, it was a conditional contract subject to finance and the Council's consent, and we have the finance, we simply need the consent. The Trust has agreed to acquire the property and convert it to an indoor cricket and sporting recreational facility, which is in complete accordance with the use of the leases I've mentioned and the Reserves Act. No resource consent is required for the change of use to an indoor recreational facility, as I've explained. The hall was in fact built by Cricket and subsequently transferred to the Horticultural Society. As is well known, the Trust owns the Hagley Pavilion at Hagley Oval. The Trust, in support of its application to transfer this lease, wishes to do so to complement the development of the grounds at Hagley, which have been recently developed by the City Council for use as cricket facilities, for club cricket, junior cricket, women's cricket, and for future cricket events in Christchurch. On the basis of these facilities, the City Council is bidding to hold all the practice games for the Under-19 World Cup in Christchurch, and some may be scheduled to be played at the park for that tournament proper. The bid also includes most of the pool matches for the Under-19 World Cup 2019, of which all would be played at Hagley, and currently New Zealand Cricket has indicated it is very keen to see this tournament based in Christchurch. Women's Cricket World Cup 2021 and Golden Oldies cricket games are also anticipated to be scheduled to Hagley Park, and the latter tournament is reckoned to provide more visitors to Christchurch than the 1974 Commonwealth Games. Since the ICC World Cup in 2015, New Zealand Cricket has changed their process and contractual method for the hosting of international cricket in cities throughout New Zealand. All cities interested in hosting matches submit a bid to New Zealand Cricket, who then analyse each bid. Christchurch City Council were very successful in the last bid for this and next season's matches, and an obligation to deliver on that contract. That success is represented in the international cricket we see this season and next season. The newly created events and tourism entity within the council will make the bid in the future. The Horticultural Hall is a vital element in Christchurch City Council's future bids for events and matches at South Hagley. If the City Council wants to continue to host international cricket or large-scale cricket events, use of the hall is essential, and it is used by New Zealand Cricket for match day purposes. The pavilion is too small for all match operational purposes for international matches, and the hall is hired by the City Council for international matches. It was used during and in the lead up to all Cricket World Cup matches. If the building was to be leased to a tenant who is not prepared to move out on international match days for it to be used by New Zealand Cricket, the hosting of these matches would become challenging and expensive. Or as an alternative, lessee may want to charge a prohibitive rental. The Horticultural Society has been very obliging and supportive and have moved out of their building, and this formed part of the Christchurch bid for hosting matches at Hagley. This season and next season has seen Christchurch allocated more international cricket days than any other city in the country. These matches bring both economic and social benefits to the city. The transfer of the lease and the purchase of the building of the hall at Hagley Park is complementary and completely appropriate and supportive of the existing facilities at Hagley Park for cricket and other sports played in the park. These ground developments have been funded by the City Council for the facilities for cricket in the park. History. Cricket has been played in this area of Hagley Park since 1851. The current Umpires Pavilion, now an historic building, was transported from nearby in South Hagley to Hagley Oval in 1864, and the earliest first-class cricket game of cricket was played on the current Hagley Oval in 1868. 3 photographs played in Hagley in 1868, early 90s and 1955 are on display. There's a larger photograph there of the Lord Hawke 11 playing Canterbury 11 in 1903 at Hagley. There is a photograph of 1955 taken in respect of all the cricket players one Saturday in Hagley in 1955, and it's estimated there was some 800 cricketers on Hagley at that time. And the other photograph is of the teams that played in that first game in 1868. Cricket's been played in this area at Hagley since the park's formation. It was in fact named after Hagley Park in Worcester, which is correspondingly named and developed as a cricket ground by the Littleton family. Lord Cobham, a former Governor-General of the city, was a member of that family from Worcester. So it's entirely appropriate that the Trust takes over the ownership of the hall. It's a registered charity. Its objectives as a matter of law include cricket and other games and sports. As a charity, the Trust and the Trustees are conscious of their obligations to the community, and the hall will be made available for all types of sports and other entities for recreational purposes. The Trust has a proven record to deliver on their promise and can assure Council that it will upgrade the building after it has purchased it. The Trust undertook a significant project to fundraise and build a pavilion in a very short time frame, which it completed, and it is now debt-free. It was debt-free within a few months. It was the first completed anchor project in the city. The Trust comprises 7 experienced business people who have significant sports and sports facility administrative experience among them. They are very conscious of their reputations and will ensure that the building is upgraded and made fit for the purposes. Cricket, of course, is the summer sport played on the grounds. Rugby, football and other sports are also prevalent, and the grounds have been done up to support those sports as well. The hall will be made available for use by those sports if and when necessary, and when available, provided those uses comply with the use under the lease and the Reserves Act 1977. We're aware the City Council has spent significant time and resources upgrading all the fields at Hagley. This year, several capital projects are taking place on sports fields all around the city, resulting in displaced clubs. The upgraded fields at Hospital Corner will assist the Council to ensure these sports continue to have fields for their games on Saturday. One of the main challenges with this option is the lack of changing facilities in the park, and the fact that winter sports codes generally change and shower on site. Council have asked to use the pavilion changing facilities this season. This request underlines the need for more changing and toilet facilities. The Trust currently provides 3 female and 3 male toilets plus 1 disabled toilet for the public use at Hagley. These toilets are open every day of the week and are well used by sports players and the general public. The new upgraded grounds will provide quality playing services for junior players and an international quality cricket pitch for women's cricket on the number 2 ground. The proposed changing facilities and toilets in the horticultural hall will have direct access to those areas. Recently,
I'm just going to have to interrupt you. We've come to the end of your time. But, do you want to just finish?
The rest of it's just really in support of that application in terms of the grounds that are there and the infrastructure that the horticultural hall will provide for the use by the public of those facilities.
That's great. Look, thank you very much. Much appreciated, and I really appreciate the photographs too. That's they certainly do conjure up the image of the way it's been over the years. So thank you very much for that as well. Thank you. And we're now circulating the deputation material from the Canterbury Horticultural Society, and Alan Jolliffe is here to speak to us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just wait until the papers are circulated.
Yes, sure. So do you want to stop the clock?
Thank you. Can I just make a comment before you start the clock? I can remember Councillor Buck standing on my street corner when she first got elected to council. So don't take my photograph. I might produce one from Rockworth Place. Yes, yes.
Do you want to clear it and start again? Yeah.
Mayor and councillors, thank you very much for allowing us to talk to you today about the sale of building. My name's Alan Jolliffe. I'm the president of the Canterbury Horticultural Society. Ray King is the vice president of the Horticultural Society, and I have also 2 members of the Horticultural Society, including our chair of finance in the gallery. So over the last 5 years, the Canterbury Horticultural Society, which I will now call the CHS, has undertaken some strategic planning and development of its activities, included in our evaluation of member and community needs, and a future focus on needs of our members, future members, and the community. 4 years ago, we determined the need to change venues for a wide range of existing and future activities. It was agreed we would sell the building, rent office premises and hire facilities better located for those activities, and work with commercial organisations, public organisations and others with significant garden and horticultural features. In fact, we're actually quite determined on that course of action. For your information, the sale process was we made our vision known to our members, building users, sporting groups and others that we believe met the requirements of the Reserves Act and the Hagley Park Management Plan. We consulted senior council staff regarding the process, acceptability and potential purchases that they may be aware of. And that process went on for a number of months in terms of that. So in fact, at one time I verbally offered the City Council the opportunity to purchase the building. Following that process, we had an offer to purchase. 2 other parties were interested and there were others on the periphery. The deadline was set for the receipt of offers from all parties. Those who received were evaluated and discussed. The result was an acceptable offer, but the conditions of sale at that time were unable to be met. The process lapsed at that stage. Overall, we've had 9 parties express an interest in and visit the building with a view to purchase. Late last year, we settled all our insurance issues, and we set about further planning and discussion with regard to the building, and determined it would still be in our best interest to sell the building in 2017. Late November 2016, Canterbury Cricket Trust made a conditional offer to the CHS for the building. At that time, we had another party interested and set a deadline for final offers. Only one was received, and that was from Canterbury Cricket Trust. Further negotiations took place and agreement was reached in December 2016. One of those conditions is the Canterbury Cricket Trust gain approval from the Christchurch City Council for the assignment of the CHS land lease to the Trust. The CHS is a willing seller of this building and believes that the sale is fully compatible with the Reserves Act and the Hagley Park Management Plan. Following on from that side there, I think it's really important that we tell the councils and people the kinds of work that we do in the community, because we need to take our programs out to the community. So the next page is our 2016 program. That's last year, the things we completed last year in the city. As you can see, it's a considerable list. Very few of those activities took place in the Hagley Park building. Most of them took place in commercial premises, private gardens, public gardens, and other venues around town, including the Botanic Gardens. And there was a report in the paper that we took our autumn show there last year. We moved the attendance of that show from probably a little bit less than 500 in the building to between 5,000 and 10,000 people in the Botanic Gardens. So it sold us completely on the need to be out in the community a lot more. And in this day and age, with the concepts of edible gardens, fresh food, all those kind of things, we need to be out there with people. So the next page is our 2017 program, which is 2016 repeated but with some content changes, plus that extra list of activities that we're going to be involved in. So we're not only involved in with our members, but we're involved with the wider community in terms of all of those programs. Last year we introduced certificate programs in horticulture. So we put through 25 people through 2 certificate programs and provided them with a certificate of completion at the end of that program. Incidentally, there were a couple of people from the City Council staff on those courses as well. We are working with Yates on the National Garden Week 2017. which was quite late off the blocks last year with Yates, and we've been asked just recently to be a part of the New Zealand School Caretakers Conference 2017. So our expertise is not local, it is Canterbury-wide, it is New Zealand-wide, and it is international in terms of those things. I've given you a list, so the question may be, where do we go? We have already had offers of space for our staff and for small meetings. Our regular meetings will go to the Bridge Club in Nova Place. Our smaller meetings will go to our new offices or other places. Our shows will go and activities will go to where the people are. Our major events will go to other venues such as the piano, and we've already booked the piano for our major Margaret Watling Floral Spectacular this year. We have indicated to Otakaro Community Orchard that we would over time be a leasee of the building there for our offices, so shifting from Hagley Park downtown. In order for the CHS to continue its work in providing the wide range of gardening and horticultural activities, we do not need our facility in South Hagley Park, as we're much more involved with the community than ever before. We wish to continue this work for the city. Our program of activities is strong. We're actively planning to make them stronger for the community. Mayor, I'm quite happy to answer some questions if the councillors have any.
Jamie.
Thanks, Ellen, and thank you for all the good work that you've done. Just wondering, you outline, the sale process and everything here, but could you just help me understand that, in the event that the council weren't of the mind to allow a lease variation, which in my opinion I think would be daft, but the deal effectively crashes, you're then stuck in a place where it's completely unsuitable. What happens then? You've talked about what you plan to do with the variation. What would you do without the variation?
I can give you an answer to that, but I don't think it's appropriate in this forum because we are asking the council to approve the variation, and if it's not approved, then we will be certainly coming back to talk to council.
Mm-hmm. So you are technically in a negotiation, so that would be a very hard question to answer.
Yes.
I guess my question is, making it work or living with it and staying there really isn't going to be palatable for you, though, is it?
Our society is determined that it needs to go somewhere else to be where the people are.
So we'd all be in a right royal mess, really. Okay.
But this has been ongoing for 4 years, is the way I read your submission? Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Yanni?
Thank you. Just related to that, in terms of the process that you've been through, obviously financial was an important consideration. Did you also consider the types of activities that would be easier in terms of assigning the lease when you considered which offers you would go through, and the impact, the impact, possible potential difficulty of the activities or impacts on Hagley Park?
The consideration always has to be under the Reserves Act and the Hagley Park Management Plan. So we did get an offer that did not comply with that, and that would be stupid on our behalf to bring that to council.
Yes. Phil?
Thanks, Alan. So you're really confirming that, over the time, and you look fairly hard with council staff for potential purchases of the building, and apart from the Cricket Trust, none actually had met the criteria.
That put in an offer. Yes, right. There were other people who would have met the criteria, but did not make an offer in terms of that. So, I'm not at liberty to tell you who they were, but yes, there could have easily been another purchaser or two that would have complied with the Reserves Act and the management plan.
But the offer didn't proceed.
No offer.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Any other questions? I'll just ask one, which is in relation to parking. So at the moment, obviously, you lease it out to a number of different organisations, and so you get lots of people coming at once. Have you considered the impact on parking when you lease it to the Cricket Trust?
Well, we'll be transferring our lease to the Canterbury Cricket Trust, so they would be responsible for car parking. Now, car parking, the lease allows 6 car parks outside the front of the Canterbury Horticultural Society, and the rest is public car parking in that area there. There is an arrangement with the council, which hasn't been activated very often, which allows for very large special events to use some grassed areas. We have not used that for probably 3-4 years, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it just occurred to me that it may in fact be a lesser impact when you've got cricket teams coming up for practice as opposed to large-scale events that bring in hundreds of people.
Absolutely, and I mean, we're not managing it for cricket, so that would be a question that cricket would need to answer in terms of car parking, how they would manage that. Yeah,
excellent. All right, well look, thank you very much. That's much appreciated, and we will. Thank you very much. So we'll now move to item 13, and could I invite staff to come to the end of the table? I think councillors have a number of questions that they'd like to have addressed. Right. Yeah. We'll just start off with questions because I think everyone's read the paper and we've heard the deputation, so I think the issues are relatively clear cut. Andrew?
Thank you. It's a question, probably a legal question actually. Clause 6.12, legal implications. So 6.12 of our report discusses the matter of the requirement that the transferee have aims and objects similar to those of the lessee. Hands-off-Hagley in their deputation discussed that and reached the conclusion that the aims and objectives are not the same, and therefore the lease should not be transferred. The Cricket Trust clearly are stating that there is a significant similarity between what's allowed under the lease currently and what their proposed use would be. Can we get some legal commentary on what weight we should add to, what weight we should put to either of those arguments?
Certainly. My view is that that section refers to objects being not the same as Hands-off-Hagley have referred to, but have to be similar. And at a high level, my view is that the aims and objects of the two groups are similar. They're not the same, but they are similar in the sense that both are set up for recreational purposes and to provide wider community and charitable benefits. So my view is that we are in compliance with that provision.
So we meet the terms of section 115?
If we were to agree to assign, yeah.
Yep.
Phil and then Sarah. Oh,
so just part of what Hands-off-Hagley also raised was the term voluntary, and that in fact the Cricket Trust didn't qualify to be voluntary. I just wonder in terms of legal definition how that...
There's a very clear definition in the Reserves Act of what a voluntary organisation is, and it's essentially a non-profit organisation. And the Canterbury Cricket Trust clearly satisfies that.
Thank you.
Yep. Sarah?
Thank you. Just a question that something that was brought up right at the end there, where the Horticultural Society currently have an arrangement with council which allows them to use the grass area for overflow parking with major events. He said it hasn't been used. Would that then transfer to Canterbury Cricket for them to be able to use the grass area for major events for parking?
Look, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if that's been amended or not in the proposal. Yes, it does exist with the equivalent of my approval. It's been called, my title's been called other things in the past. Yeah. I think it's pretty clear, very clear now to the public that we don't intend to let anyone park on Hagley Park on grassed areas. And so it's very unlikely that the activity associated to lesser people utilising indoor cricket lanes, A, would even generate the need for it, or B, whilst I can't be explicit and say I would never utilise my delegation to allow it if it does get transferred, I think I can be very confident and say that, you know, under the current administration, that's not occurring.
Because while well, it's unlikely to be used for, you know, training purposes and those kind of things. I mean, there are major events coming up at the Oval, and both those facilities would be kind of co-used. And would that allow for parking on the grass on the grounds of Hagley Park if you approved it for test matches and things?
Not in my mind, no. I couldn't see how it would generate sufficient demand to allow it.
Glenn?
Thank you. We've been provided with the email of the delivery package for 17-18, which comes to 1.03 million. I note that 930,000 of that is involved with improving compliance with resource consent. So I guess my question is, if an additional building is provided for Canterbury Cricket, you'd have to think that opens the possibility of further breaches and costs. Is that a reasonable...
Sorry, I'm not sure. Are you referring to an item in the report?
No, an email provided to councillors with the...
Well, Andrew may not have seen that.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's been unfair.
Is it relevant to the issue that we're considering?
I think it is, because it indicates how much it's cost in terms of the resource consent breaches to restore the oval in places.
I think that's well. Let's put that on hold. Can you send me that email?
We've all been sent it.
We've also discussed that.
We discussed it. Yeah. Oh, is it that? That's a yeah. It's
Okay.
it's not relevant to the issue on the pavilion. The pavilion issues are not relevant to the horticultural, but perhaps we could get on the record who is the holder of the resource consent for the cricket ground itself, the pavilion and the cricket ground. I know that's all right.
I can respond in respect to a verbal briefing that Brent Pizzi from our legal service unit provided, which is there is no holder of the resource consent. The resource consent applies to the land, being Hagley Oval, and whomever is hosting an event on that land must comply with the conditions of that resource consent, be they council, be they Canterbury Cricket, be they any other entity that wish to use that venue for an event. That's my understanding, but it's best corroborated formally from the legal service unit.
Right. So, but if, for example, the spectacular international cricket events that we've had, who hosted those?
Most recently,
yeah,
with the international cricket, Christchurch City Council is effectively the host.
Right. So we have obligations under the resource consent ourselves?
Yes, we do. We have to meet all of the obligations under the resource consent.
Thank you. Yanni, and then Pauline.
I'm really glad to hear about the parking, and given that the response, what's the problem with having that as a variation to the lease as well, just to make it really clear? Is there a problem with
that's probably best responded to by the two entities rather than me. I mean, from my perspective, as the manager of the park, I think I've made it very clear to everyone that they are sports grounds, not car parks.
Yeah. That's great. I really support that, and I just would see that the assignment of the lease would be a way that we could actually make that give some more certainty, so that if it's not you in that position,
I'm just going to ask Robert to respond.
Yeah. It's actually not a matter that's that should be dealt with in the lease. It's a matter, what Andrew's referring to is a delegation that he has as Parks Manager to deal with applications for use of Hagley Park for car parking. Right. And that's a general matter which applies to any use on Hagley Park. It's not covered off. It's not a matter that we would expect to be covered off in individual leases. Okay. Because the lease, of course, is only for the footprint of the ground underneath the building. It doesn't give anybody, or sorry, it doesn't give the tenant any rights beyond that defined footprint.
Okay, thank you. So just two other questions. Was one, obviously with the construction, and we've heard that the refurbishment is going to take place, and there may be some changes to the building, which I think will be approved through council staff, but just minimising the impact on Hagley Park during that refurbishment, or if there is significant construction going on, have we got a process in place to ensure that that is done. Given, I mean, there were issues previously with the pavilion, which is why I'm, just wanting to make sure that we have a way of dealing with that.
Given that there's no formal proposal to make adjustments to the building at this point in time, I mean, we look at these things on a case-by-case basis. In any parkland, where parkland is required to be temporarily used to support infrastructure development, most commonly with our own infrastructure developments, being council, there are clauses in any agreement that ensure that any areas that are damaged need to be returned to their former state. So that's a normal, common practice for any activity associated to development.
Right, except trying to stop the damage in the first place would be much more preferable.
Sorry, beg your pardon?
Trying to stop it from being damaged in the first place would be a lot more preferable.
Oh, we always look at situations where we can avoid damage to parkland before, it's a last step before letting them use the parkland. Yes.
And then the final question I had was in regards to external signage. So I note that there's nothing that I could find in the leases, and we've just had them this morning, so sorry if I've missed it, but is there any controls over external signage in terms of what can be displayed? I mean, obviously Hagley Park being quite a sensitive place, having a lot of children there, is there anything that you've considered or anything that you think could give us a bit more comfort over what could or could not happen?
Just from memory, there'll be a provision, and if I had a few more minutes I could find it, but I'm sure there's a provision in the lease which will require council's consent to any alterations to the building or additions to the building. A sign would be an alteration or an addition, so would need consent in the same way as the alterations that were being referred to in the conversation a moment ago.
Right. So in addition to that, in terms of signage, both at Hagley Park and other parks, there are obviously resource consent limitations that need to be met, and also signage policies in respect to the type of signs on parklands.
Yeah, so just the idea that, if there was a sponsor, say an alcohol sponsor, for example, having external signs on the building, things like that, you think we would have the ability to?
Yes, they're covered by policies within Council's policy framework.
Yeah, at 5B of the lease.
Right.
Cool. Pauline and then Aaron.
Yeah, mine's just very quick. Is the lease and the variation of the lease available to the public?
Yes.
So where would they find that?
Well, they would need to ask. Well, they would need to request it.
Request it?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Aaron?
Mine have pretty much been covered off though over the, I just was a little concerned about us making rules around this one which kill us for other events, like the alcohol one gets rid of the Beer Fest in North Hagley Park if you don't allow any alcohol signage on a park. And there's been, and I'm assuming everyone else has got the complaints about at North Hagley Park, the events that we've now taken out the parking, people find it inaccessible, and so that will need a lot of consultation, I think, going forward.
Yeah,
how we do that.
The parking did come up in the previous council, and maybe we do need to get an update for everyone, for the new council, on where we got to, but very much so the damage that was being done to the trees and to the park itself. The park wasn't being given sufficient time to recover, and I guess that there's a side of me, and I know others share it, that it would be good for, in terms of transitional use of the residential red zone, that some of that wonderful area of land was made available for concerts and various other events. One, it would re-engage the community in that area, but it would also reduce the pressure on Hagley Park. So yeah, it is something that we're very alert to, but parking on Hagley Park, no.
It's not working, yeah, and that's something that Councillor Scandrett's raised a number of times, is that site down in the Avon Loop, and I'd have to agree because it's not as sensitive.
And it would be actually good for us to have a discussion about parking on Hagley Park, because it's all about the management, which I have mentioned a number of times, so it'd be better to have an offline discussion.
And weather.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the worse the weather, the more damage that's done, you know.
The bottom line is management, that's all it is.
Yeah. So, but I've taken great comfort from Andrew's statement that, you know, he's going to be protecting those interests. Great. Phil.
Can I just ask a further question, because Lee Robinson, we ran out of time with the submission, but particularly around the what I understand, and I'm just asking the staff really, your understanding of the increase in interest in cricket, and particularly the potential involvement for club cricket and extending that and the training.
I think Mr. Robinson sort of touched on it in his presentation, that the support infrastructure associated to our open spaces where all our community sport is being played, not just at Hagley but around the city, is frankly relatively poor. And so part of being able to grow and engage people in recreation is making sure that they have a great experience. And I think we're doing quite well moving forward in terms of our green space in that space. Hagley Park has the capability of hosting a number of events, sporting type events, as Mr. Robinson touched on. But we do have to somehow address how to support those events with built form. And this is one small opportunity, if it goes ahead, to be able to do that. I'm not sure if I've entirely answered your question, but
it was also, Andrew, that my understanding is that there's been a significant increase in interest by young players in cricket, and how
in cricket and in fact most sports, cricket, football, and rugby are all growing at the moment in the younger age groups, and we can't necessarily support them that well with that other infrastructure.
Any other questions? Dion.
One of the comments that Hands Off Hagley made was about pay for play, and obviously that is a bit of a we want to make this available to people. Is there any provision that Canterbury Cricket are making to make this actually openly available to people that might potentially not be able to afford to use those facilities in the future or anything like that?
I think that question is probably best presented to the trust. We're not familiar with any of their operating.
I could invite them back to the table if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I would like to sort of just hear that, because it is one of their conditions in their actual trust deed, so I just want to sort of hear about that.
Lee, do you mind coming back?
So just in answer to that last question, we are a charity, so we can't just singularly say we're here for cricket. Part of our requirements in terms of the funding for the pavilion that we made it available for community. We have the similar obligation in terms of our objectives, and I've tried to make the point in the submission that this will be available for all sports and all recreation on the park. So if there's a concern about that, we have a statutory obligation and a legal obligation to ensure that our functions, if you like, comply with those duties. And our relationship with Canterbury Cricket is an arm's length one. While we were originally set up to be supportive of cricket generally, or specifically, generally, we've got to take a wider view. And that's why we made the submission to this council 4 or 5 years ago that it was appropriate that we had the ownership of the pavilion and not the Canterbury Cricket Association, which was simply focused on cricket and its operations. So we can give the council all the comfort in the world about that issue. And if I could also say that we fully endorse the council's policy about car parking. In the first year, car parking was permitted on the old polo grounds. We said in our original submission to in terms of the pavilion that, look, it's a central city facility. We don't intend, nor will we, provide car parks for our patrons. All our members know very well they've got to either get there by bus, taxi, walk, or park in the surrounding streets. So we fully adopt that policy from the council. We have no need or request for parking on the grounds, and we weren't aware until yesterday that the Horticultural Hall had some sort of right. It wasn't in the lease, but we don't intend, nor do we want, any additional requirements or facilities for car parking.
So I just want to make very clear that within your trust deed it says that the organisation will facilitate the physical recreations for interests of social welfare, basically going to the end for people potentially that don't have the economic circumstances to pay. I just want to make it very clear that you will be making the facility available to people that can't afford to pay to play.
So the sort of things we envisage is that a school might want to use the facilities inside the horticultural hall for their cricket players. That will be made available via Canterbury Cricket, who has access to those clubs and schools. And it's to be a universally community service, and that's we've had those discussions with Canterbury Cricket, and we've got a meeting this afternoon to formalise those sorts of arrangements. But they're very clear that any access to the horticultural hall will be in terms of complying with our wider requirements and objectives.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming back. So I think that's all the questions. So would someone like to move the recommendation? Mike Davidson, seconded Jamie Goff. Is there any discussion? Yanni?
I just think that, I think when you hear the entire context to this, it's actually quite an easy decision, because, basically, I think we're getting an asset that is going to be an even better community asset from what we've heard, and I think that's a real positive. I think if you look at the surrounding area in terms of upgrading the fields, and the comment was made from council staff around those age group tournaments, and I had the privilege of opening the National Touch Championships in Hagley Park last year, and what you can see is that those sorts of events actually bring a huge amount of people into the city from around the country, and they're really, really critical, I think, to the vibrancy and also to the well-being of the city. So I think this is a step forward, and I think I'm reassured or comforted by the fact that, this is actually the use by which this building was actually built for. So the idea that, that it going back to that use gives me a lot more comfort than actually going to a brand new use or a completely different use. In particular, just want to acknowledge that the environmental effects have to be looked after and managed, and we need to commit to that. But it is, I think, there is a synergy with the Hagley Oval, regardless of views at the time when that was built, that we actually need to make the most of that facility now that we have it, and this certainly will contribute to doing that. But I think the idea that, and I'd just like to flag that we consider an additional resolution that we again set up a Guardians of Hagley Park group, so that we can actually, instead of having things come at the last minute in front of council and to people that are concerned, have a process by which we ongoingly work through in a proactive way those very real and serious environmental concerns over how Hagley Park is treated by people that are using it. So I don't know if the mover and the seconder would agree, but personally I think it would be a lot more beneficial to really have a resolution around doing that, so that any ongoing issues in the future can be hopefully discussed, addressed through that process. But thank you to Canterbury Cricket, and thank you to the Canterbury Cricket Trust and to the Horticultural Society, and also to the Hands Off Hagley. I think we've all heard very important information today, and actually I think this is an optimal outcome for the city, acknowledging the concerns that have been expressed.
So were you moving an amendment then?
An additional resolution.
Can you write that? Tell me what that is.
Well, I think that we just asked staff to report back on the establishment of a Guardians of Hagley Park group. On the progress, yeah. On the progress within the next month or 2 months.
Yes, it is a separate issue, but...
Well, point about the proposed amendment. There's already a resolution on the box. A lot of work has been done because of all the variances around Hagley Park and the Botanic Gardens by the staff, as I said. There is already a resolution. Staff are working on that. In addition to that, the term guardians has some legal connotations, and council will be obliged to follow through on those. That's my understanding. So I'm just making the point that, in fact, I don't think that that amendment is actually necessary or helpful.
Well, it would be good to have it noted somewhere. It is in response to the deputation that we've heard, and you heard that they heard about this through the newspaper. So I would like to get better processes for people that are interested in these issues, and I think that that's a way to do it. So maybe we just ask for a note back on the progress on it, if we've already agreed to it.
Well, can you put quote marks around Guardians of Hagley Park, because that may not be the name, and when do you think by?
I say 3 months, because there's some processes in place already.
Are there?
So it's more about engagement, because there's a variety of groups.
References.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So there's progress being made, but this is just asking for an update on where progress is up to. So maybe. I know. Yes, I realise that, but what happens is that if we don't have a resolution, then it's difficult to track just exactly where things
so I'll report
are
back
up to.
on my CE update
Yes.
the next month.
Next month. Okay. So that the council requests that the CE provide an update on the progress of the establishment of a quote Guardians of Hagley Park. Take out the word group and in her next monthly report. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah. Type of group. All right. So, are Councillor Davidson and Goff happy to have that included as part of your resolution, and then it's just dealt with? I think the original, but anyway, look, put friends/guardians, right? I'm just being very reasonable here. So if that's okay with people, very good. Right, Jamie.
Yeah, it always gives me a bit of a kick because it doesn't happen often for me to say I completely agree with Yanni. So it's good to start the day off like that's going to be an interesting day then. But no, Yanni said it really well. It's once in a blue moon this gets said, but yeah, Yanni's absolutely right. It's this is a good outcome, and you know, all I really want to say about it is that, you know, the likes of the Canterbury Cricket Trust, you know, with other partners, but really created, you know, with the Pavilion Hagley Oval, a sense of pride in our city again that perhaps some people hadn't had since the earthquakes. Made people feel like we had a real city again, and that we actually were in a space that was better than what Christchurch was like just for a moment when you spent a day there since those earthquakes. This isn't quite to the same scale, but I think the moral of this, or to sum it up, is that the Canterbury Horticultural Society have been very good guardians of this hall, but the time's come for them to move on. So I think the variation, or for us allowing a variation to the lease, ensures that that all parties benefit. You know, the Canterbury Horticultural Society are going to be in a better place, the Canterbury Cricket Trust are going to be in a better place, and most importantly, and why I most certainly support this, is that the people of Christchurch are going to be in a better place, because we're going to have a facility that adds value to not only Hagley Park but Christchurch. So yeah, a good outcome all round.
Very good. Andrew?
Thank you. I understand some of the concerns that have been raised, and I think it's good that we've had the opportunity to ask questions around that, and I'd like to thank Hands Off Hagley for coming in and raising those issues. It's important when we're discussing a facility in Hagley Park that we do have the opportunity to hear all of the community concerns and ask questions, have them answered, and have good debate around that. So thank you very much for raising those issues. But I'd also like to thank the Canterbury Cricket Trust and the Horticultural Society for coming in and sharing their view of this with us, and being prepared to answer questions as well. The concerns around parking certainly have been well canvassed in terms of Hagley Park in the past, and it's good that we've been able to get positive answers to those questions today. And the community use of this facility, the continued community use of this facility, is something that was certainly important to me, and it's good to know that that will continue. Clearly this facility also has got a key part to play in our hosting of international cricket matches, which is something that certainly puts the city on the map and will continue to do so. So it's really good to have had positive answers to all of the questions that have been put this morning. This looks like a win-win for all the groups concerned, and actually I think the biggest winner in this is going to be the city, so I'm very pleased to support it.
Yep. All right, I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. And if Canterbury Cricket would like to collect their memorabilia. Hey? Hey? Yeah, it's very nice. Right, so the next item on the agenda is presentation of petitions. There are no petitions, and if we